Yo, cat. Give me just a couple of minutes, guys. Getting things sorted. Feel free to grab your soda, popcorn, whiskey, vape, whatever you need. Okay. I'm pumped that we actually have the chat working almost right out of the gate. That's pretty fantastic. Let's drop this over here momentarily. This guy over here. Okay. Give me a couple more minutes. Let's see if I can get this Facebook thing to work. Okay. Oh, just let the Discordians know. Alrighty. They know. I'm seeing this, but I'm not seeing our IG. Hey, do you know? Yeah, man. Sweet. Claude. We're not. Claude. We're not scraping IG. Dum. Yeah, I kind of didn't want to have to explain how you would embed a Trojan inside of an SLM. I was kind of just hoping that me saying, yeah, you can do it. So be wary. But I can't tell if people truly believe it can't be done or if they just don't understand how it can be done. So what the heck? I'm going to explain how to do it. And the reason why I didn't want to do this is I didn't want to explain to other people that are bad actors how to do this in the event that they hadn't figured it out themselves. I was kind of hoping that me just saying, yeah, it's pretty obvious how you could do this. And so just be very careful. But I've received dozens, hundreds, whatever comments at this point, basically saying, I think some people asking in a very genuine way, like, how do you do it, Goju? And then other people, I think, being just openly defiant and deciding that it can't be done, which is a very weird view to take, I think. You know, I'm of the mindset that almost everything can be done. And, oh, Marie, it's great that you're here. Marie, are you a lawyer? You have a JD? I can't remember. Anyway, so I kind of take the view that anything's possible. That if you can dream it, then you can probably build it. And that's kind of how I end up building the things that I build or my inventions, this type of thing. So it's kind of a strange mentality, I think, at least for me, to hear people be so certain, like just really sure that something can't be done. Uh, so anyway, because of that, all right, I'll explain how to do it. Just, I guess I'm gonna teach everybody how to embed a Trojan inside of an SLM, and we'll go over it really quick because I really want to talk more about the Apple lawsuit against OpenAI, and that one I think is particularly interesting because I think that that has the potential to absolutely change the landscape of things. And it's kind of been a long time coming, that there's some history with that. So let's see if Claude can figure itself out for the IGers. And once we get that sorted, we'll dive in. But we're principally going to talk about the stuff that you see. Actually, let me pull this over. Oh, sweet. Okay, great. Yeah, no. That's awesome, Wraith. It's great to have you on this stream because your legal perspective of understanding legislation and lawsuits and all this stuff, I think will be really informative because, as I've mentioned in the past, I've worked with a lot of lawyers in various spaces, from machine zone stuff as like defensive nature things, dozens of patent lawyers for inventions, and then, of course, having my own legal team with Merle and so on and so forth. So I have a general idea of the landscape, but having someone that actually is deep in the trenches, like yourself, I think will be super helpful. Okay. I'm not stopping OBS. Get it done. I am live right now, idiot, and a dozen people on G that are typing things that you should. This is really the underlying issue with stochastic AIs in a very serious sense. Like, if you had a deterministic system, the issues that we're having every time we start a new live stream, trying to get it reconnected with the stuff, this is purely a stochastic AI stupidity. And this is, I think, one of the core reasons why we need deterministic systems at the foundation, because many of the things that we do in software or in systems that we're building, we want reliable behavior. There are cases where we want stochasticity, when we're brainstorming and we're being creative, but like, you want your refrigerator to refrigerate. You want your microwave to microwave. You want to be able to select the TV show that you want to watch and have it play that TV show. And so deterministic science and technology is, in my mind, the foundation of all of this stuff. Having small pieces that are stochastic that can help us with ideation or exploration is very valuable. But I'm of the strong conviction that 98% of the core stuff that we have is likely going to be deterministic, and you want it to be so you don't have issues like the silliness that we're running into right now, that we run into every time we start the GDT live streams. It's just crazy, right? Hey, Sleepy. So Claude's working on that. I'm giving it a serious scolding. And for you IGers, I can see what you're typing. And hopefully it'll show up on our main window here in a second. But while that thing is figuring itself out, I mean, maybe I'll just quickly explain how you can embed a Trojan or put an exploit into an SLM and just how trivial this is. Like, so there's a lot of people that are saying, well, you know, these neural networks, they're just weights. It's not executable code. You're completely clueless. Goju, there's no way to put any kind of bad stuff inside of a model. So let's show how you can put bad stuff directly in the model and basically completely Trojan somebody's system. I'm getting some weird washed out thing. Let me see if I can adjust the lighting. Give me 1 second, guys. All right. So, and my advance apologies if I sound a little snarky. I get a little pressing the button on your... Exactly one, right? Like, these buttons on this remote behave deterministically, and we really like that. If it started to not do that, things would probably not be so good. And it could be fun to have, you know, Google used to do this one thing where, sweet, why does this creep you out? One, because I'm going to explain how to do really bad stuff. Yeah, I mean, you guys know. Okay, well, I better shut up about that. Like, anyway, Google used to have this button, right? Like, I'm feeling lucky today or something. And you press this button, and then it would just pick one of hundreds of thousands or something of search results. And so that can be fun-ish as us just kind of playing around. But it's sort of a one-off thing, and it's in a very controlled space when we want that. Anyway, so let's talk about neural networks for a second, and let's very quickly explain how you can hack the heck out of this thing with extreme ease and take over anybody's machine with almost no deep knowledge of neural networks, systems, any of this stuff. So we back up a second. For the course that I teach at the uni, there's generally these 4 domains, right? There's the ML side, there is the software engineering side, there's the PL side, and then there's systems. And in order to understand how we're going to embed a Trojan inside of the SLM, you kind of have to have at least a basic understanding of all 4. In some sense, I can kind of understand why people struggle with this, because it does require maybe somewhat advanced understanding of these 4 domains simultaneously. Let me just try something here. Give me 1 second, guys. I'm just trying to get Claude to unstupefy itself. Okay. Yo, Echo. Why is this so hard, Claude? I thought you were super intelligence. You're not living up to the hype, bro. Okay. So back to our neural networks and machine programming. So in order to kind of effectively hack this thing, you have to have a little bit of an understanding of all four of these domains. And so if you're just a pure ML person, yeah, you probably wouldn't know how to do this. If you're just a pure software person, you probably wouldn't understand it either. And if you're just a pure systems person, you likely wouldn't be able to figure it out. So you kind of need a amalgamation of all four of these domains, because we're going to leverage technology across all four of them. So the first thing is we need to understand what neural networks are. At their base level, neural networks are essentially just numbers. They're just numbers. And we'll say they're mostly floating point numbers. But floating point numbers generally are going to be represented in, well, there's a variety of ways to represent them, but we're going to, for the purposes of this exercise, store them in hex, and then there would be some space for the mantissa and the exponent. And that's basically the space where you have the, so we say something like this. So you can represent this number, 1.7 or something, that you need to break it down and understand the number itself and then the exponent in terms of how small or big it is. So there's a little background on like floating point numbers. Oh, look at that. Okay. Claude finally figured itself out. Okay. So the neural network is basically just numbers. That's all it is. And when we think about a neural network, we can have these vectors of numbers, but maybe the easiest way to think about it is we have these nodes and these nodes are weights, and they're connected in various ways, however we want them connected. There's also these ancillary inputs known as biases, and these are also numerics. And then for each of these wires, there are these activation functions. So you get the idea. And then what happens is, as this stuff marches forward, you eventually output something, and then you have that something that you're outputting mean a specific thing. Like in this case, I drew 3 things. So let's just say it's figuring out if you're male, female, or other. All right. That's the gist of the neural network. So what a lot of people are getting confused about is they're like, so a neural network model is just a whole bunch of numbers. How could you take this thing that's just a whole bunch of numbers and make this do bad stuff? Okay, it's very simple. And I think part of the confusion is that a lot of people don't necessarily understand things deeply. They understand things sort of superficially. And with just a superficial understanding of this, you probably wouldn't be able to figure this out. So you have to be able to go lower than just thinking of the neural network as this black box that does stuff and it has a whole bunch of numbers, but you have to kind of understand how it actually works. All right, inside of these neural networks, these wires essentially give us guidance on how the information will flow from left to right, right? And we're not going to get too deep into recurrent neural networks and back edges because I'm just going to make this simple. So for the purposes of this discussion, the transfer of information is going to go from the left to the right. But in a recurrent neural net, you can have back edges and you can do crazy stuff, but it doesn't need to get that complicated. If we added a recurrent layer, we could do even more wacky, crazy stuff. But all you need is just a simple feed-forward neural network. All right, so now we have our neural network, right? And it's just a whole bunch of numbers, and so this can't possibly do anything bad. Sure it can. All we need to do is take the same thing, and we have all these wires, and it goes to all these things, and then we have a special section inside of here that is object code. And that object code is going to contain our Trojan. It's going to be precompiled, pre-built as object code, and we're going to link it into something that we have on the machine, probably the installer. And once we activate that, it's going to cause the installer to install a Trojan executable. And the way to do this is very simple, is you have the neural network model, just like we have here. And then we take this section here. What this section here is object code that contains our Trojan. Because models are just numbers and binaries are just numbers. Object code can be just numbers. And so we just pre-build the bad stuff, and we know exactly what his footprint is, and so we take that object code and we drop it directly into the neural network. So, okay, Goju, how does that not kill the entire neural network behavior? Because it just skips right over it. The way that we wire up the neural network is at this layer, we jump all the way over here. So these layers that are part of the neural network, they're completely ignored. They're never actually executed. So the behavior of the neural network continues to perform and do all the stuff that it's supposed to do. And now we've embedded a Trojan that is pre-built code, that's object code, that all it needs to do is be linked into something, and then we can take over somebody's machine. Again, like I was saying before, and I don't mean this as a flex, like this isn't with me even trying. That's how simple this is. This is not hard. You could come up with a far more sophisticated solution that could be way better than this little toy example that I've created, but you can do it entirely within the model itself. The idea that you somehow can't create bad things in things that have the appearance of being just raw data is like really sophomoric. We've been able to embed these types of hacks for decades in things like JPEGs, right? That's why when your email system is saying, I'm not going to download these pictures because if you don't trust this, the picture itself might be a virus. That's because in that data file, you can embed things that can execute and do bad stuff. And that's just an image file, right? So the same concept applies to anything. It doesn't have to be a JPEG. It doesn't have to be a neural network model. It can be anything that consists of data. And the easier it is to do is reflected by the abstraction of what the data is and the way that it's presented to the user. So for example, it's really easy to do in things like JPEGs and GIFs and all that stuff because the user never sees like the numeric representation of those images. They just see the image itself. So likewise, you can do the same thing here, is that the user is never really looking at the neural network model weights and all those numerics. They just know that you put something in and something comes out. So just hide the Trojan directly inside of this. And the way that this would work is because these are all numbers, and that's what you need to have for object code, is you wouldn't try to figure out how to like take a working neural network and then figure out how you could take those numbers and make it do bad stuff. You would just re-architect the neural network itself and say, look, just have the neural network, and then I'm going to take the object code that's going to do bad stuff. I'm going to embed it directly inside the system, and then we're just going to skip right over those layers. And the only reason why you embed it inside the network and you don't have it be like a stream of biases is it's probably a little more obvious that it's an exploit if it's a huge bias. Because biases tend to be like pretty small numbers, where if somebody saw 100 kilobyte numeric for a bias, they might be like, that doesn't seem right. Something is strange here. Whereas if you have 100 kilobyte in multiple layers in a neural network, people are going to be like, sweet, yep. I mean, look, it's an 8 billion parameter neural network. Of course it's going to have stuff, right? Easy peasy. This is a piece of cake. This is a walk in the park, how easy this is. Yeah, sweet. Right. So I love it. Thanks for sharing this, Tetya. Right. So all you need to do is be able to take over these numbers here, right? And essentially make sure that the numbers that you're presenting are the executable object code. Now where it starts to get like a little tricky, if I'm being honest, is as you start to get more advanced in the system space, if you wanted this to be like universally executable, you need to have it in an object form that isn't bound to the specific architecture that you're targeting. So like if you want this to Trojan itself on the Mac M series ARM processors, and then you also want it to work on like AMD and Intel x86 and then something else, what you'd have to do is you'd have to abstract the binary information so it's a more generic object representation. So something like Java's object code or the .NET framework object code. So then it will do a translation layer from that object code that's more general to the specific architecture that it's running on. But again, these are not hard things to do, right? Anyone that understands systems, and remember how I was saying, like, in order to figure this out, you kind of have to have expertise in ML, software engineering, PL, and systems, right? So now maybe you can kind of see how it's an amalgamation of understanding all these things. I think people that think that it's not possible, or they're like they get stuck in, it's just a neural network, it's just data, is probably just the ML people, or the people that are not super strong technically, and so they have a rudimentary understanding of ML systems, and then they're not considering that these things can be multi-purposed. So anyway, yeah, absolutely. Like this abstract binary interface, or application of binary interface. Yeah, so it sounds like to me that Tetya absolutely knows how to do this. He or she could probably explain this far better than I can. But this is easy peasy. This is, like I was saying, 7 seconds. Just see it in my head. It's so freaking simple. And that's not a flex. It's just very trivial to do this. And the idea that the CCP or whoever's building these Chinese models or whatever wouldn't be doing this, huh? So someone else was saying that one of the key things, the only way this is possible is like if you have the model and you have the network totally turned off, there's no way it can infect anything. It's in the fucking model. It's in the model. That is where the Trojan lives. You don't need to download anything extra, yo. It's, again, I'm not trying to come off too hot here. It's just, it's confusing to me how people are so certain about the safety of these systems, where at least from my perspective and probably from Tetya's perspective, it's like so obviously dangerous. And when you're working with people that are known bad actors and you're giving them the keys to the front door and expecting that they're just going to behave nicely and not do stuff like this, when we know that they just did something like this with the XC utils backdoor. Literally, this is the playbook for the XC utils backdoor. This is almost exactly what they did. Is they were very smart. They didn't embed any malicious code into the repo. What they did is they embedded object code that were supposedly tests that were going to test the XC utils library at the point of deployment. And then when those tests were unpacked from the tar file, it turns out that those tests were object code. When linked together, they create a backdoor through SSH. And then they assembled them. They used the resident linker that is already there to link the library, and Bob's your uncle. You're cooked, right? So I don't know what the big deal is. Like there's how you do it. And by the way, this solution sucks. Like you could do way better than this. You could do far better solution, but this is the caveman solution of how to hack neural network, embed a Trojan in it that's going to be directly executable. And then all you use is basically a utility helper system that then links this to some executable, probably the installer or the harness or whatever, right? And it's true that you probably do need another helper executable, but basically all of these systems have those, right? Like when you're installing Claude Code and you're getting things to be largely locally resident, there's a whole bunch of helper utilities, and you would just follow the playbook that they followed for the XC utils backdoor. Now, what I'm really worried about are solutions that are far more sophisticated than this. Like this one with some analysis, you could, yeah, PDF attacks, exactly, Ghost. Exactly. Stuff like that where it really looks like it's just data, or the spreadsheet attacks, right? That they have all the data, but there's a script that's embedded in it, and it's just like, yikes. One second here. Are we not getting? Why am I not seeing... some of the... Sorry guys, I'm just trying to figure out why some of the chatter is not coming across from IG. I see you. It's like Claude's dropping some of it. Unless I'm missing it. No, I think that it's... Yeah, it's being dropped. Give me just 1 second. In this coming week, I'll sit down with Claude and give it some tough love, and we'll figure out this stupidity so it stops interfering with our live stream. Oh, the class system, Ghost? Yeah, at some point, once I think that the GCC system still kind of sucks. It's getting better, but it's not up to my standard yet. So I want a little bit more time, essentially, to level it up. Because if I showed it to you now, like, I think most of you probably wouldn't be super judgy, but I'd be pretty judgy on myself. So I need more time to iterate with it and refine it. But maybe in the next, let's say maybe in August, I might be ready to show you guys the code. I think it's about 100,000 lines of code at this point, which I don't love. That's too much. And I've been trying to refine it to get it to be smaller and smaller. But I will do that, Ghost. And I have, by the way, I have the design already. And we keep iterating on the design to make it better and better. And it's not a bad design, I think. And it's pretty decoupled, and it took a lot of work because Claude's original design was just total horseshit. It's like pretty bad. And so after several weeks, it's finally to the point to where it's got good software engineering principles that are part of it, I think. And yeah. So give me another month or so, and then we'll have an episode where I just talk about the architecture, and we can look at the repo. We can go over the breakdown of the Go code, the Python code, all the JSON, and just the general structure. Yeah. Awesome, Graham. Yeah. So my hope is that, and again, for all of you Jeets, the reason why I didn't want to explain this is some people don't know, and they're bad actors, and they aren't as knowledgeable and as intelligent as we are, and they want to do bad things, but they don't know how to do it. And that was part of the reason why I didn't want to explain how to do this. I would just say things like, it's so easy to do. And then I just hand waved away. But given that there was a lot of comments from the GTT community, I think asking, some of them very genuinely asking, how would you do it? The conclusion I came to is basically that I should probably explain at least a rudimentary explanation of how to do it, mostly to arm people with the knowledge of what to expect, so that now that you know how it can be done, you can, like, knowledge is power. You can now be on the lookout for things like this. I don't, maybe this has a specific name in the security world, maybe Tetya, or Echo. You guys know what this is called. For me, I think it's just an embedded trojan inside of a model. But now we know how it can be done. And it's, yeah, pretty straightforward. And I think maybe I will sometimes if I talk about stuff that's like too sensitive, what I'll do is I'll talk about it in the live stream, but then I'll delete it afterwards. So the only people that ever see it are those that are GTT members or if you were on the live stream. And I might do that here. What I might do is after we finish this live stream, I might just delete this and then only allow people that are members to access it. And the reason for that is, I think that's probably a good call. That's probably what I'll do. Because we don't want all the bad actors in the world to be able to just very easily scrub GTT and learn all the ways to do bad things. Because a lot of these folks that are doing kind of pretty nefarious things, they're just script kiddies. Like, truthfully, they don't really understand stuff. They just read about something and then say, oh, I'm going to download this or whatever. And so the less that we teach them how to build the dangerous thing, I think the better it is. Anyway, okay. So, yeah, thanks, guys. Yeah, I absolutely agree with this, Tetya. I think that we need to get knowledge into good people's hands, and there you go. Yeah, this is probably a very elegant way of saying it, that it's a matrix embedded attack. Yeah, that's basically exactly what it is. Because the way to think about these neural networks is they're just a massive network. Sorry, it's just a massive matrix. And just one section of the matrix embeds this malicious code. Okay, so now that we've talked about that, I think we can skip on to our next topic, which is this Apple OpenAI lawsuit. I'm going to leave this up over here for people to screenshot it or something if you want. But yeah, so now let's switch to this topic. Maybe give me a 2-minute bio break, and we'll go from there. All right. Thanks, guys. We're off to a great start. Alrighty. Now on to our Apple and OpenAI fun. And by the way, I think this could be a very big sweeping change moment. And I think that's because of a lot of the background that's led us here. So let me see if I can gather up some stuff to walk you guys through a little bit of the preamble that you probably know about, but I'm going to help us recache this. I think I'm going to try to draw this over here. Hold on, let me... All right. There's a couple interesting points, I think, to kind of start with. Yeah, it is absolutely playground time. 100% it is. Yeah, I 100% agree with this, Kat, is that we always have to be 15 steps ahead of them. So we can already be building out the fix to the thing that they're going to drop on us. And, my view is destroying things is really easy. It's like not that hard. Building things that are super resilient so they can't be broken is orders of magnitude more challenging. And I'm more interested in the latter, is trying to build these systems that are just so resilient. They're so buttoned up that, like, I think in the security world, it's viewed that there's no such thing as a perfectly secure system. It's just impossible to have that for a variety of reasons. But getting it to become like a nines problem, where you can get it so advanced that it's a very hardened shell. And in order to do that, you have to be able to think about things like this. And then once you figured this out, then you have to be building in the framework to make sure that this can't happen. As many of you know, I've been arguing that if you use these Chinese models, please make sure that you put it in an air-gapped sandbox, right? Like, this is why. I fully anticipate this is going to happen. It may not take exactly this form, but something like this is going to happen. And I don't want any of you guys to get owned, right? Like, I've been owned before, back when I was a young whippersnapper and had no idea what I was doing, and it sucked. It was the worst ever. And one time is enough. So, okay. Let's talk about this Apple OpenAI thing. And I think I have a short little clip. But there's some preamble here. And there's some stuff that I know just because I have insider folks that are very high up in the food chain at Apple and other places. And so I kind of know what their view is on things. And one of those is Apple is split. Let's say this is like a lot of people for some period of time they were saying things like Apple is totally out of the AI game, right? They're like completely behind and they have no skin in the game. They have really no foothold in AI at all. And some of that I think is not totally false. I do think that the history of Siri is pretty... It's not great. If you don't know about the history of Siri, to my understanding, it was its own company, and that Apple acquired that company. The company's name, I think, was Siri. And it had a front to it that kind of looked like it was doing something magnificent. But then the actual implementation of Siri was less than stellar. Let's just leave it at that. So it's not some massively sophisticated AI. It was more like hard-coded rules that were trying to get it to do certain things, and that maybe wasn't fantastic, right? Yeah, having Tim Cook step down, and then who the new CEO is, I think I was reading a little bit about it. Yeah, a lot of interesting history there. So when this LLM madness kind of started, Apple took this view, this is at least from my insiders, of it could be completely hot air. It could be that this entire LLM thing is completely bogus, and there was a large group of people inside of Apple, executives and senior technologists, that were like, it's gonna be a massive dead end, and we want nothing to do with it. This is gonna blow over, and people are gonna waste billions, trillions of dollars on this, and it's gonna be kind of all for naught. This is kind of some of the view inside of Apple. And so there's like two camps that were kind of emerging. There was this one camp that, and keep in mind, both of these camps are pretty senior people. They have a lot of influence. And so it's not like one camp is all powerful and the other camp is just a small group of rebels that don't really have any influence. Both camps have some kind of presence and influence. So you have one camp that's pretty much anti-LLMs, and you have the other camp that is, well, look, AI is clearly the future, and maybe it's LLMs, maybe it's not, but we need to be deeply invested in this. Okay. So inside of Apple, they're doing a lot of this research to try to understand what to do. And Apple is a different beast than many of the other tech companies. One of the things that Apple historically prides itself on is they don't follow the leader. They don't buy into this nonsense at all. And I gotta tell you, I have a deep level of respect for them for that. They think for themselves, and they really are, that whole Apple is, or think different, they really do kind of embody this. And because of that, they haven't invested massively into the LLM stuff like Microsoft, Google, Amazon, IBM, NVIDIA, blah, 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 right? And it's not because Apple's dumb. That's not it at all. It's more that Apple is a lot of their folks are hyper intelligent, and they've walked through many of the things and come to, in some sense, similar conclusions that I've come to, that all of us have come to, that language models could be very powerful, but cloud-based language models are not super great. And one of the things that Apple is really keen on are AI that runs on device. So not just AI that runs on-prem. On-prem isn't enough, because on-prem could mean that it's a whole cloud system that's on-prem, whereas on-device is like, no, you have a locally resident AI that's going to run on your phone or your Mac hardware. And I love that. I actually share a lot of the same view on that, and probably for very different reasons, right? Apple wants to do it because they want to own the whole stack, and I think they are keen on privacy, which is great. I'm keen on that too. But part of their reasoning is they basically want all of the stuff to be running on their own hardware and not to be beholden to a cloud vendor that's like outside of their control, right? Yeah, 100%, Dino. Yeah, you're jumping you're jumping ahead of my storytelling, but yes, OpenAI got two guys. They got, is it John Ivey? Is that his name? Might be misremembering. Which is a big win for OpenAI, big loss for Apple, and then several other people. But so in the setup of this straw man, in this background, it's important to understand that Apple has been a little bit out of the AI game, not because they don't know what they're doing. That's not it at all. It's that they've been very skeptical of this actually going anywhere. And I think in some sense, Apple is going to be one of the biggest winners in this game, because I think they correctly predicted that I think many of us are seeing right now, that this LLM hoopla is mostly just that. It's a lot of hot air. It is cool tech, but it's not going to change the world. And really what's probably more likely than anything to happen is it's going to be SLMs. And so while OpenAI, Anthropic, Microsoft, NVIDIA is sadly the big winner no matter which way this goes. But any of the big frontier models and their investors, I think they're going to end up losing majorly. So Apple's lack of involvement in the game is not because they're scared or they're stupid. It's more to do with, I think they correctly predicted what the outcome would be, and they needed the AI systems to be locally resident. And I've had many deep conversations with people at Apple on this type of stuff. Okay. Now, while this is going on, and these two camps are fighting inside of Apple, Apple is seeing that all of this stuff this LLM stuff is taking off, right? And it makes them nervous. Like, did we get this wrong? Did we actually not make the right call here? So with that in mind, they then made a decision to work with OpenAI. And some of you may have forgotten about this, but me being the super nerd that I am, I didn't. And here's a walk down memory lane. This is back in 20... Oh, I think I'm missing something over here. Here we go. This is back in 2024. That we had this Apple Intelligence, this OpenAI partnership, and they started to work with Oh, can I not read this? This is paywalled. Uh, but basically, you can see a little bit of that. It's announcing a partnership with ChatGPT developer OpenAI. Let's see if we can find. Here we go. This is great. This is like a serious popcorn moment. Seeing this historical stuff on OpenAI's website about their partnership in 2024, when now maybe not such good friends. Okay, so this kicked off, and immediately as this thing started working, I think that Apple was integrating it into something like Apple News, and it was getting the news summaries wrong. People were very quick to discover that the news results were had some problems with them. And while OpenAI may have a very kind of laissez-faire view of like, yeah, it's AI, it's going to get stuff wrong, this is Apple we're talking about. And they have much more concern about their reputation, that they're not making these egregious mistakes. And so it's not the same, right? That Apple is actually a company that makes a ton of money. And yeah. 100% XBL. Yeah, capture the hardware to capture the software for control. 100%. This is, I think, one of Apple's biggest plays. They want to own the whole vertical, and they start by owning the hardware. And once they own the hardware, then it's very easy to own the entire software stack, because you can make it so that all the software has to run on your hardware, which is fundamentally different than anybody else's hardware. Thus, the break in marriage between Apple and Intel several years ago, although I hear that there's potential correction of that in the works. Anyway, so while OpenAI may be totally fine with the mistakes of ChatGPT, Apple not so much, right? Apple holds itself to a very high standard, right? They believe that they are best in class, and in some cases I think they are best in class, and they don't take this stuff lightly when you make mistakes on things like news summaries. So if we do this and say Apple Intelligence Chat GPT news summary mistakes. Here we go. Apple faces criticism over AI-generated news headline summaries. Yeah, that's right. Remember this, guys? This is the kind of stuff that was going on. And again, not all big companies are the same. Some of them are, like OpenAI, they're not really they're kind of a joke in my mind. They happen to have a lot of money because they're really good at kind of hoodwinking people, but they don't really have a sustainable business model. They haven't been around for any longer than like the time it takes for us to sneeze, and they're probably going to vanish from the entire space in a really short period of time. This is my strong conviction. So OpenAI is very haphazard and maybe doesn't really care if they get things right or wrong. All they want is just to be kind of in the spotlight. Whereas companies like Apple or Google, you want to be held to a much higher standard. And so making these types of mistakes are unacceptable. I actually remember when this happened, I was talking to some of my colleagues at IBM, because we were partnering with them. I was working with Roger Primo, who I think just recently left IBM, but he was the global head of strategy at IBM. And I texted him this message saying, this can't be going over well at Apple, because Apple holds themselves to a very high standard. They don't make these types of mistakes. This is going to come back on them. This is, a couple years ago. And now keep in mind, with the court ruling in Germany, with Google being on the losing end of that and how they're now liable for those summaries, this is exactly what I'm talking about. So I was of the mindset that big tech cannot make these types of egregious errors. They need to be held accountable. You can't produce misinformation like this. And immediately after this happened, Apple began to wind down or shut down this partnership that it was having with OpenAI, or at least it wasn't nearly as prominent in the public domain as it was before. Like, there was one point of time where they were, yeah, thanks, Dino. And mostly, and keep in mind, like, I don't ever think that I'm Nostradamus or anything like that. I'm more just looking at it and asking fundamental questions. Like, this is not good. You can't have headlines like this that are just completely false and have it come from like this news source, which it didn't, and get promoted by a company that supposedly is a world authority, that being Apple. It just, this can't be allowed to happen. And I think the BBC was super pissed off about this. A lot of people were very angry about it. And Apple, of course, I think took most of the blowback, but it wasn't even Apple's fault. I mean, it was OpenAI's fault. It was Apple's fault for believing that they could use OpenAI's technology and actually think that this is going to behave in a reasonable way. Okay, so this was maybe one of the first signs of tension. Then, as we start to move forward, you get, here, we'll just leave this guy up over here. You have this partnership, you have this blowback, and then we have this massive event. You have Johnny Ive leaving Apple and going to OpenAI. Awesome, Cat. So this was last year, right about this time, that there was this huge announcement that Johnny Ive, this fella here, was leaving Apple, going to OpenAI to then work on this new futuristic hardware or whatever mumbo jumbo. Now, unlike Sam Altman, Johnny Ive is considered a design god. This guy is worshipped in the Valley, right? He's done an incredible amount of things at Apple and is considered to just have a level of genius on how to build really incredible systems, specifically for like user design and user experience, this type of thing. So for him to leave Apple and to join OpenAI, keep in mind, this happened after this partnership stuff. This app happened after this fallout. And then this is, in some ways, a major poach. This is a massive poaching event from two groups that were buddies, right? This is all critical, I think, to understand this story of where we are now and how wacky things are about to get, because they're about to get real wacky. You don't poach someone like Johnny Ive from Apple and expect that there's not going to be blowback. That you might remember back in the day, there was a point where Adobe was poaching just software engineers, not somebody at like Johnny Ive's level, just normal software engineers. Adobe was poaching them from Apple And Steve Jobs sent an email to the CEO of Adobe at the time. I can't remember who it was, basically saying, I hear through the rumorville that Adobe is poaching Apple engineers, and I need to understand how we're going to move forward on this. Is this something that you're going to fix, or am I going to have to fix it? Something like this. And let's see if we can find this email that Steve Jobs sent. Here we go. Okay, so it was May 2005. Steve Jobs sends a blunt four-sentence email to Adobe CEO Bruce Curzon demanding an end to this. Jobs wrote, Bruce, Adobe is aggressively recruiting iPod people from Apple. If you guys continue to do this, we will have to start aggressively recruiting from Adobe. Is that the way you want it to work? That's pretty sweet. I think that's pretty fantastic. And the reason why I want to mention this is that there is an understanding in the Valley between these tech companies that you don't do this type of stuff. Otherwise, it's war. Like, there's an understanding between the executives that you don't do this type of thing, and that you can find really good people, but you do it on your own. You don't steal from each other. And if you do, then we're going to steal from you, and it's going to be all-out war. So it's sort of like this gentle person's agreement where everybody's kind of playing nice, even though they're competitors. So when you do something like this is considered like an act of war. This is a major shots are fired kind of event. That this isn't a low-level software engineer. This is like one of the foremost badasses in Apple, and it was clearly a poach event. All right, so now we have some background. You have the Apple's different. It's doing its own thing. It's not sure about this LLM, but it's then being seen like it's behind. They're trying to catch up, and they pull in this OpenAI stuff. They create this partnership. It immediately goes south. Then they poach Johnny Ive, as well as a few other critical people recently. One which was, I think, one of the heads of hardware architecture. Tony, give me a second. Something like this. I forget the guy's name. Tan. All right. So now we have this situation where OpenAI is going after a whole bunch of people from Apple. And in the process of doing this, some of the people that are being pulled over, because keep in mind, OpenAI is, they're very confused, guys. They think that they can break any kind of rule. These are the guys that there's a strong belief that they unalived the whistleblower in San Francisco, right? Like, they play by their own set of rules and think that they can just do whatever they want to do. And it's massive corruption over there. Like, Sam Altman, I think, is probably going to end up going to jail for the rest of his life once this all gets played out. Because the things that he's doing are so completely corrupt and illegal that the laundry list is just outrageous. And I think the only reason why it hasn't happened yet is he has a bunch of people's money that are very angry about not getting return on it, and so they're protecting him until they can try to get that return. The moment that that is seen as this is just falling apart, is it's going to be a feeding frenzy. I think it's going to be an absolute feeding frenzy on Sam Altman. Fully expect that that dude is going to jail for such a long time, and they're going to throw away the key. This is my strong prediction, given all of the bad stuff. So when you have a guy that's like that corrupt at the top of the food chain, and there's a ton of evidence to support this, right? Like, keep in mind, 7 out of the 9 founders of OpenAI, they've all exited stage left with OpenAI. They've all bailed, which is crazy, right? Because OpenAI is this massively successful or supposedly successful company. If it's so great, why would 7 of the 9 founders leave? It must not be all that great, right? Yeah, this is absolutely like a Elizabeth Holmes from Theranos event all over again, except way worse. Way worse. Because I think Elizabeth Holmes, what did she manage to raise? Maybe like $500 million in total or something. I mean, she was still definitely like a bunch of corruption and a bunch of lies. But Sam Altman has pulled in, I don't know, it's like over $100 billion, some ridiculously large amount of money. Yeah, so Marie, this is part of the reason why I wanted to have you on this live stream is, so Marie's asking, let me just pull this over. Do we think that the pro-mobility laws in California can be part of the problem? I don't know. And I would love to know what your thoughts are on this, Marie. So for those of you guys that don't know, Marie is, she's a professor of law, and she has a JD, and so she knows the legal ramifications of this stuff forwards and backwards, much better than I do. And so while I can follow the breadcrumbs on like the tech side, she actually has the knowledge of the actual legislation and what is legal, what's not legal, all that stuff. So Marie, if you want to jump in at any point and share like some things that you're thinking now that you might be getting a little bit more of the data that maybe you had, maybe you didn't have, I actually would love to know what your thoughts are. Okay, so this poaching thing is happening, and in the process of this poaching, because OpenAI is so freaking corrupt and they encourage bad stuff. Keep in mind, it all starts from the leadership. The leadership is encouraging this bad behavior. Then you get this kind of stuff. Let me see if I can find this post that details some of this, because boy, is it bad. All right, I'm going to drop this guy over here. Marie, I'm going to move you over here. We're going to watch a small amount of this CNBC clip and hear what they have to say. Give me 1 second. I need to adjust get the audio working. I told you we were going to rabbit hole in this, guys. We're really getting there. Okay. Almost there, guys. All right. Okay. Let's see now if this will work. Let's give this a listen.
A legal action against OpenAI, suing the AI startup for trade secret theft in federal court here in Northern California. The suit alleging that the Frontier Lab took Apple's intellectual property in order to develop its own consumer hardware. Apple saying in that filing that they've, quote, uncovered a pattern of theft of Apple's trade secrets by OpenAI.
Okay. Apple has uncovered a pattern of theft of Apple's trade secrets by OpenAI employees who were formerly at Apple. All right. let's just kind of break down the separation of things that sit in the IP space, the intellectual property space. So on one hand, you have the stuff that's in the public domain, and those are things like the patents, the publications, all of this. And then the stuff that is super, super sensitive, the stuff that it's too sensitive to even create patents on because it's critical to the business, it falls in the space of trade secret. And while I was at Intel, most of the patents that I have are on software, and so Intel was okay with me doing that. There were a couple patents I was involved in that we actually invented some new hardware things, and immediately Intel was like, nope, that's trade secret. This is trade secret. We're not going to allow this to go out because it's too valuable to our core business. Now, Apple is very keen on being a secret place. They do crazy, wacky things in the way that they organize their company. They literally silo their own teams from each other, that no individual team ever knows everything that's going on, specifically to avoid cases like this. That if you lose someone, there's no single person that actually knows how all of it works. And on top of that, because they're so secretive, they don't generally do patents, and they almost never do publications. Again, it's not because Apple can't do publications. It's that they don't want things that they're working on to become public domain. So with that, you'll have a lot of engineers that are, even in their siloed space, they will have deep knowledge of things that are trade secret that nobody else knows about, that if manipulated, and again, this is completely illegal. This isn't like borderline illegal. This is openly, you'll go to jail for a very long period of time if you sell trade secrets. This is like corporate espionage stuff. This is really, really bad. And in normal cases, this is like people leaving Apple to Intel or to NVIDIA, given they're all hardware companies. There's an understanding that the stuff that you did over there does not come over here. We want you for your brain, for your knowledge, not for the secrets that you know, and we will never even ask you. We'll never even ask you questions about what you did there, because even us having knowledge of what you did is potentially in violation of the law, and maybe Marie can jump in and tell us how accurate that is. But there are strong mechanisms that you put in place to make sure that you're not on the wrong side of this. This is like super serious. But again, if you have really corrupt leadership, like you do at OpenAI, massive corrupt leadership who has no care for the law and is going to do anything they can to potentially win, it seems pretty obvious that Sam Altman and company would do this. And now, through some of the people that they've hired, it's my understanding that some of those Apple people have encouraged the people that they're taking from Apple to take trade secrets with them as they move to Apple. And it's not being, so it wasn't being necessarily promoted directly from the OpenAI people, because how do you get this new boss at a company you'd never worked for before asking you to do totally unethical, immoral things? But having your former boss at a place where you worked for, let's say, 10 years that you deeply trust, and now they're saying, hey, look, we don't like those guys anymore. Take this stuff over here. We're going to set this up, and we're going to be the new kings of the hill. Just trust me. We worked together for 10 years, right? And so the people are probably more likely to do totally unethical, corrupt things if it comes from those people. And that is supposedly what's going on here. What has gone on is that it's the hiring managers that are at OpenAI now that were previously the managers at Apple that have encouraged the employees that they're poaching to take trade secrets with them to OpenAI. And that is really bad news. And one of the key people, supposedly, this is allegedly, I want to be very careful here so I don't get into trouble. Allegedly, this is this Tan Tang guy. Let's see if we can find this. I've been looking for new office chairs. I found one. Okay, here we go. Before joining OpenAI, Tan had spent 24 years at Apple, most recently as VP of product design for the iPhone and Apple Watch. And yeah, this is like so bad. The lawsuit, which was filed in the U.S. District Court for Northern District of California, accuses Tan of using Apple's confidential project code names during OpenAI recruiting process, asking job candidates to bring in Apple hardware components to their interviews, coaching departing Apple employees on how to evade the company's security procedures, and asking for details about the company's unannounced products. You can't do this. Bad. You're in a lot of trouble doing this. The accusations come at a time where OpenAI is rumored to be developing its first hardware product, which would likely compete with the iPhone. And keep in mind, they've had Johnny Ive, right, since 2025. So there's some seriousness to this. Apple's former lead designer, Johnny Ive, device startup I.O. was acquired by OpenAI last year for some insane amount of money, which makes no sense. And what's really interesting is that in the lawsuit, neither Altman nor Ive, as I understand it, were called out directly for this. It was, I think there were two people. It was Tan Tang and somebody else, if I understand correctly. I'm going to switch back over here real quick because I want to see what Marie's just saying. And then I'll get back to some of these great comments, Kat and others. So Marie's saying, as far as I'm concerned, it's not a smart move from OpenAI based on the Cal Pro Mobility and the no non-compete. They could hire all these people with their knowledge legally, right? So there was a time where you could, I think, legally have no compete. And what the no competes are, and Marie, feel free to jump in if I'm misremembering this, is they essentially say that for some period of time, you weren't allowed to work at another place that is in the same domain for like 6 months, 12 months, whatever the period of time is. And that was actually part of a lot of the big tech rules for some period of time. There was this burned in no compete. So for example, I can't be at Intel and then jump straight to NVIDIA. That would be in a competing domain, and Apple could basically try to throw me in jail or do something bad. That's when the no compete stuff inside of your contracts were legal. And then, if I'm understanding what Marie's saying, there was a change, I think it was a few years back, that basically said that the non-compete laws were illegal, that this is creating essentially like monopolies and it's preventing people from their mobility, thus the whole pro-mobility stuff. And so they did away with this. They basically said, no, you can't have that. So now you can jump from place to place, and you see a lot of that. You see actually a lot of people leaving Intel to go to NVIDIA or AMD and vice versa. And, my view is I think competition is really good. And so allowing people to jump from company to company, I think all it's going to do is likely hold big tech more accountable to pay people more fairly. The executives of those companies probably don't like that at all, because now they have to compete with other companies for their top people. I think they much prefer when it's the no compete stuff. And so you have this environment where this stuff is kind of legal again. But what's not legal is this whole stealing trade secrets. So you can see how this kind of starts to become a little bit of a slippery slope. Is you aren't directly breaking the law now that the pro-mobility stuff is in place, and the non-compete, the non-compete stuff is destroyed. And then that potentially leads you to this secondary behavior of, well, let's push the envelope even further. But that second piece of taking the trade secrets with you and doing things like that stuff that's never going to be legal, right? That's their IP. That's the Coca-Cola recipe. You can't take that stuff. That's a big no-no. Yeah, exactly. And so for any of us in the Valley, when we've been looking at these NDAs and things, they'll try to kind of railroad you into overly restrictive NDAs, which for those of you in the Valley, my general advice is try to avoid signing these NDAs as much as possible, because they generally almost always work against you. I understand, as someone that is sort of a business owner and has run a few different tech companies, I understand the need for the NDAs to protect yourself. But when they start to go too far with them, I think that's where you get into a lot of trouble. Okay. So Tetya is saying, yeah, usually NDAs will state that you're barred from doing the exact same work for a competing company after your contract ends, but it's kind of blurry if the knowledge is in your head. Yeah, exactly. So it's like you're not doing, it is very fuzzy, because you're not necessarily taking the stuff that you worked on the other company and replicating it identically. That would be outright illegal. But because you have knowledge of this domain, at what point is it activated? So you learn how to do some cool new technique on this thing at this company, but the technique itself is not a trade secret because it's abstract. That technique, I think, should be applicable wherever you go. But now if you get into a specific embodiment of that technique, so the technique is how to make the general concept abstractly of how to make neural networks more efficient. And there's a bunch of mechanisms. But then there's a very specific embodiment for this very specific type of neural network that is a trade secret at Apple. If you take that thing and pull it over to this other company, you're probably in complete violation. That's trade secret. You're going to go to jail for that. But if it's a general thought process that isn't a concrete embodiment, that type of stuff, in my mind, should be legal. But it's very murky. It's really not super clear where, it's like shades of gray, at least for someone that's not a lawyer. Okay, so we're getting really deep down the rabbit hole. Let's go back to this and let's see what else CNBC has to say. And by the way, I'm intentionally breaking this up because I don't want to get a copyright strike from, I think there's these rules on if you have content that's like over some I don't know. We got a copyright strike on YouTube for something super stupid. So I'm just trying to protect myself from legal trouble right now.
Employees who were formerly at Apple. Now, the suit specifically naming two OpenAI executives. The first is OpenAI's chief hardware officer, Tang Tan. The action describes Tan directing Apple employees interviewing at OpenAI to take Apple documents and other trade secrets. They said Tan used those job interviews to gain insights and insider knowledge, specifically asking for details on unreleased Apple products and technologies.
Bad. And again, just more evidence for all of us on how corrupt OpenAI really is. These guys are, I think they are so cooked. Goju block returning is somebody saying, yeah, hold on, it's an injection attack. Hold on, Is it a user? Echo? Or is it a software call? What is? Oh, on Twitch? Okay. Let's see if I can find this person. I actually just built, oh, here we go. Yeah, so I just built this. There we go. Gone. Yeah, you guys haven't seen this behavior yet, have you? Now you have. And unfortunately, the way I coded it, I think it only sits initially for some 10-minute period. But if I do this in perpetuity, I think it levels itself up. I need to code this so I can adjust the time period. And also so I can add like a full ban. But yeah, good call. So there's stuff that I've been building in GCC that you guys haven't seen yet. there's lots more stuff like that I'll show you over time. Okay, so back to the IG clip.
Also coaching departing Apple employees on how to evade security processes when leaving the iPhone maker. Now, the second named person is a former Apple product developer who allegedly took a stolen laptop with him to OpenAI, which he then used to download highly confidential technical documents for months while working on hardware at OpenAI. That's according to Apple, and it also includes unannounced technologies from Apple's R&D lab.
The other thing too is Apple is, in my experience, they tend to be pretty cautious about these things. That I don't know of a single case where Apple has kind of come out on another company in recent memory where they've made accusations like this and they've been like openly wrong. Given that we know that there's history of Apple and OpenAI working together and we've seen that relationship sour and we've seen all the stuff, this is why I wanted to give you all the background so you could see all of the stuff building to this moment. It's my speculation that Apple is going to destroy OpenAI on this. The other thing I want to mention is it's my understanding, and Marie, maybe you can jump in and share if I'm getting this right. Once Apple puts this lawsuit out in the open, it serves as an injunction that will halt forward progress on the projects at OpenAI, specifically their hardware projects. And so it's multi-purpose. It's a multi-purpose tool. The first is that the injunction will halt the forward progress of that hardware development, which is really paramount to Apple being able to not get scooped by whatever this hardware is coming. I mean, like OpenAI, I think, has royally screwed themselves, thinking that they're going to outthink Apple. Like, I think it's like this is a massive misstep on Sam Altman and company thinking that you could game these guys, right? You don't mess with hyper intelligent people. You just don't do it. So you get the injunction that essentially will halt the forward progress. And then if you go further and Apple actually wins this, it's going to be massive fallout. That not only will people end up going to jail, there's going to be a lot of lost trust in the community. I mean, as if OpenAI hasn't already lost an incredible amount of trust in what the things that they've been doing over the last several years. This is, I think, going to be a potential nail on the coffin. Because now you just burned a bridge with a $1 trillion company that actually is seen as a technical powerhouse, a technical titan in the valley. This isn't you screwing over a tiny little startup where people are going to kind of lock that away and forget about it. This is a company that people love, right? You get the Apple fanboys and fangirls, and they hear about this, and now they're going to be permanently jaded about OpenAI. They're probably going to not use ChatGPT anymore because of this slight. And then that's going to cascade to business relationships. Like, this was such an egregious misstep. Like, just the degrees of lack of intelligence that OpenAI would take to do something this egregious is mind-boggling. My only speculation is that OpenAI is in such a bad spot, and I think that they are in a very bad spot, that they are basically pulling these Hail Marys. They're trying everything that they can to find a way out of the quagmire that they're in. And they're in a massive quagmire. So, yeah, I think these guys are cooked in a major way because of this. My speculation is that in the coming months, there's going to be some kind of outcome here. Apple's going to win this, given the historical precedents that Apple is generally not filing these types of things unless they are very certain about it. I suspect that they have a airtight case on this already, and the culmination of the things that are going to go wrong for OpenAI, plus all the things that are already going wrong for OpenAI, this could literally be the nail in the coffin. It's that big. It could change the entire landscape of OpenAI's potential future in AI. That's what I think. Yeah, as Marie's saying, OpenAI are in a bad spot for sure. This is a textbook violation. Yeah, very much how I see it. It's just... don't do bad things. And especially don't do bad things with really powerful people. You know, don't poke the bear. Big, big mistake. What's going on here? Why can't I heart Dino? I'm trying, Dino. It's not letting me here. I'm gonna heart everybody for the chatter. Okay, guys. Yeah. Crazy, wacky stuff. I need to take a short bio, and then maybe we'll wrap up with additional comments. But these are the major points that I wanted to go over. We didn't get to... what did we not get to? Where's my other... oh, here we go. Hello? we didn't get to these other gems. Maybe we'll discuss some of these on the live stream tomorrow. But this is the one that I wanted to discuss the most, because this one I think has the potential to change the entire landscape, and I think it's going to. And it's not going to just because it's, yeah, absolutely. I think that's part of the, is it this one? No, it's part of this AI subsidization era ending that I saw on Threads. We should absolutely talk about that. Give me a minute or two for a quick bio, and I'll give us all a countdown so we can stretch our legs. And then let's go from there. Let's give ourselves 8 minutes. Okay. You guys rock. I'll be right back. Okay, folks. All right. So I think we're going to call it for today. This was super awesome. We got into two major things. Essentially how to trojan SLM, easy peasy, and some insight into this crazy Apple OpenAI thing. And I think that it's gonna be real interesting. yeah, yeah, for you. What is this? Why can't I'm trying to heart you? There we go. Just gotta figure out where to press. Don't worry, Echo. I think we'll probably be back tomorrow. Just got a bunch of stuff that I need to take care of, so we're gonna have to call it a day tonight. I know. I'm sad about it too. But I'll look into maybe adding. Yeah, you're multitasking. I knew it. Yeah, it's hard for me to multitask while I'm live. I can't be secretly building stuff while I'm talking to you guys. Or at least I haven't figured out how to do that quite yet. So thanks, everybody. For the SLM stuff on how to hack an SLM, what I'm probably going to do for this live stream is I'm probably going to wipe it from YouTube. And I'll just put that under the members stuff. So bad actors that are just trying to mine GTT aren't going to get insight into how to actually build a Trojan into an SLM. But for those of you that want to understand how it works and then how to get in front of it, maybe the next step is we'll talk about how you can detect it. Because detecting object code inside of neural nets is not that hard. So if people are doing this type of hack, I think that it's not super difficult to defend against that. I think some of the more advanced ways of taking over SLMs, like when you have trained malicious behaviors that are not using like traditional von Neumann code inside of the model, those are going to be much harder to detect. I don't know that I've figured out how to detect those yet, but detecting object code in it is super easy. Yeah, XLB nerd. Yeah, we have our Discord where we talk about all kinds of things. So feel free to hop on over there. Let me drop this in the various chats. And there's where's that restream one? Oh, here it is. Is that it? No. Where is it? I have no idea. But that should have just... Did that not drop? Yeah, something strange is going on here with our chat guy. Maybe we'll have to work on that tomorrow. Looks like it's dropping certain things from IG. Let me where is the restream window? That is not it.
What's going on back here? Oh, what's this? Wait.
to get into the chat. There we go. Awesome. Yeah, so we've got our post chatter channel on Discord for any of you that want to continue in the post live stream, right here. You can continue the conversation. But I'll plan on doing another live stream tomorrow where we can dig in a little bit more. I've been trying to get the VOD pipelining stuff sorted. You probably noticed that we've been dropping a lot more clips and segments. And so that system, that's part of the GCC system, that part's finally getting pretty robust. So I'm pretty excited about that. And now that that's stabilized, I think I'm ready to level up some of this other stuff. Yeah. No, I need the help for sure. Absolutely. Yep. I mean, literally, I think you might have missed it, Echo. I think I specifically asked Marie and others on the Discord to come for this live stream because I wanted to talk about some of this legislation stuff. But don't worry, soon enough, all of us will be hacking on the GCC thing once I open source it. So with that said, you guys are amazing. Please share the good word of GTT to all your friends. And stay safe out there. Keep going and keep growing.